the aftermath, what's happening, what are the residents mainly concerned about when it comes to dealing with this massive fire?
Thank you so much. Like as you said, it's a sad situation. It's a tragedy because as you are aware that our traders or vendors, some of them, they were also keeping their wares in their stock. It was destroyed by fire. Many losing thousands of dollars worth of goods, and even to some extent money. And then also you actually see that the place right now, they're just ruins. You actually see some people just getting in there, probably with hope that probably something will happen. And you actually see that it has been a devastating issue, especially around the residents themselves, and even those who are trading in the market. And you actually see that there are probably some feelings around to say what would be the best way forward. And you actually see that there are different sectors, who are pushing for different agendas, which I think which becomes a challenge, especially for the local authority, to then deal with that issue going forward. Because you realize that if you understand the context of Mbare Musika, like as you said, some people were owning the stores, and some also, to some extent, were also subletting. And then again, you actually see the complexities now to say, how are you going to help? Who's going to be helped, as you said? Who's going to get the loan? Is it the official person housed by the local authority? Or is it the
person who suffered the loss?
Exactly, or probably who are subletting, but also what suffered the loss. So those are some of the challenges which we have seen. But again, as you are aware, when we were coming, it's now raining. To say what are
as of a few minutes ago, yeah.
What are the emergency responses in terms of putting back the infrastructure, which is also fireproof as going forward? When is it going to happen, and who's going to do what? We have also received some reports that there were some people who have started mobilizing resources to put back the wall. I think in the afternoon we gathered our evidence. People saying that they were now putting together their money so that they can erect the perimeter wall. But those are some of the things which are happening, which I think also as a way forward, going forward, I think the local authority then is a big task to say how do they engage critical stakeholders in ensuring that the things or probably the restoration of activities in the Mbare market happen soon. Yeah, that's what I can say at the moment. Yeah.
All right. Coming to you, Your Worship, in terms of your assessment, I know that, and I did see some pictures of you and footage of you touring the rubble and the aftermath of the Inferno. What is the status quo? What is your feeling around the issue before we get into the initiatives around trying to recover for a lot of the affected?
Well, it is the feelings. It's a very sad, tragic state of affairs. A lot of losses to people who are not in the formal economy, people who are not insured, whose livelihoods are basically dependent on being there, who probably are not able to account for the losses that have occurred, and also that these are some of the incidences that could be prevented, that should not and ought not to happen in a modern city, that we cannot continue. It's a lesson to us that the laissez-faire attitude towards residents can and must not go any minute longer than is necessary, and that interventions around the informal sector and how our people operate, survive in businesses should be taken seriously and with the force that they deserve. We cannot. We are thankful that the Inferno did not cause a loss of life, did not cause life-threatening injuries to people. It could have been worse, and if we had not intervened, the Inferno could have spread right across Mbare. So something has to be done within our areas to be ready to deal with modern day protective buildings, modern day protective mechanisms, fire drills. How do we protect? How do we deal with the fire before it even spreads? There are now technology, smoke detectors, warnings, and very cheap interventions that can be done to douse out a fire before it engulfs people's property, causes threats to houses, to everyone, and nearly become a national disaster. So I do believe that we should put ourselves in a position where we go all out to be able to prepare for these eventualities, because everybody, if you moved in there, you could see that something was up. People cooking, you know, gearboxes, maize, the same place, eating this, burning that, someone making cobra using heat, gas, and all sorts of inflammable objects that are there, paraffin, plastics themselves are very difficult to douse. And also the attitude, our drills, the people who are keeping the place, are they trained? Do they know what to do when a fire is beginning? How do they detect it? How do they react to it? Are they even fire extinguishers at the premises? If not fire extinguishers, I mean a fire extinguisher. I remember at primary school we used to have buckets with sand in the old days, just to prepare in case for a fire. You just had buckets with sand strategically located at the classrooms, that if there was a fire, you just put sand over the fire. So it's some of those elementary things that we should be talking to our fire services to prepare the people to always be there. It doesn't mean if we say your building must have a fire extinguisher, you are then going to get an expensive contraption from somewhere else. Things like that. You know, water sometimes as something to stop a fire does not work, especially if you're dealing with plastics. Those are hydrocarbons, and sometimes fire doesn't do the tricks. You need sand, you need certain chemicals to be put in place. So I have a feeling that we ought to be more ready than we were, and we ought to prepare and create an environment where people operate in areas where they are not going to lose not only their property, potentially their lives, because we are not ready and we don't have fire drills and there is no fire preparedness at our premises.
You know, I'm quite pushed to say, you know, how would you respond to sentiments around this being very reactive and that there's no proactivity? Had there not been an inferno, would no interventions have been made, Honorable Mafume?
Yes, I would agree with you that it's being wise after the event, and it's always easier to be wise after the event. The biggest trick that is facing our society now is to be wise before the event. We leave a lot of things to chance, a lot of things to prayer, a lot of things to lucky charms, contraptions, and other beliefs that we might hold as a society. But we need to be ready. We need to be proactive. And I will hold up my hand and say, as city fathers, we ought to be at the forefront of being wise before the event. Everybody knows what to do after the event. It's when your sister gets pregnant, you know what she ought not to have done. You ought not to have to go in that room. You ought not to have done this, talk to that person. You can always say a lot of things after the event. But what is hard and what we need to learn as a society, from the councillors to the citizens to the council workers, is being ready and being wise before the event.
Akili, coming to that, I know we're going to get into the heart of the initiatives in just a moment, but in looking at, the recommendations of what could have been done better, from the residents' perspective, is there ownership of some of these risk factors, and how can a fire in the future be avoided? Patal Road, pange pane zvinhu zvakawanda zviri inflammable zviri kutsvapa, pane chakati nechakati, mwari kuweredha, mwari kudini, all these factors, it's a powder cake just waiting to go off.
Thank you so much, Ruby. Thank you so much, Honorable Worship, for those, I think, for that input and even accepting that, something could have been done. Just picking from what he said, I think the local authority has been in the process of coming up with a disaster risk reduction strategy. So you remember when the Glenview Inferno happened, we recommended to the local authority that there was need that we have these localized disaster risk reduction, strategies and the plans, and this can be able to then help, alleviate the risk that will happen. If we have a disaster risk reduction plan, will help us to respond to some of these issues. And you realize when they are localized, like from what his worship was saying, if we are saying that in Mbare, they know how best they can be able to respond to any hazard that would have also emerged. It might be floods, it might be anything else. These people would have been probably inducted on different aspects. They were their leaders, and again the plan should have been in place so that at the end of the day we cannot be reactive. And again, you actually see that over time we have been pushing for this, because when we have also a budgetary commitment towards that, it can go a long way now. Because over the years, we actually see that even our local authority budgets have not been having that component of disaster risk reduction planning at community level. I understand that they have a department of the public safety, and they will talk that we have an ambulance, we've got the fire machine, but that's not enough. Are the people themselves, are they educated? Are the plans at that local level? Do we have the plans? Where is the assembly point? Like from what the mayor is saying, when fire happens in Mbare, where's the assembly point? Where are those points where we can be able to have those hydro water, and also even the fire extinguishers,
the hydrants. Did you bring these issues up? I know we're currently in budget season. I'm just wondering, were these issues brought up at budget consultation meetings, or it was, I suppose, before the fire happened? So was it in the mind of the residents?
Yeah. So you realize that, as I said, Rumbi, this is not the first time. We made this recommendation when the Glenview issue happened. The Glenview, I think the Glenview fires have been perpetual, and but again we did not learn that it can also happen in Mbare. That is the challenge now, because we become reactive. So even when it happens in Glenview, we recommended to the local authority that there was need for a budgetary allocation towards DRR, which they say a disaster risk reduction plan. To some extent, I think last year, or the beginning of this year or last year, they started a process of developing that plan, and which is also a positive. But again, I think it can also be expedited, so that at the end of the day, people are then equipped with skills, people are equipped with plans, but again, even the resources to then deal with such issues. So basically, that's what I can say. Would say we need to have that disaster risk reduction strategy, which then informs my plans and kumanana mabvuku kunana Glenview kunana even ma areas akafana nemisika yoyo. You need to have such, so that at the end of the day they can be able to respond to any disaster. What fire is another disaster, but remember this year we have also been told and warned that we're going to La Nina is going to and do we have the plans, and we big forth. So I think it's important that we become proactive in dealing with issues of emergencies, and especially these disasters.
And we certainly will get into recommendations before the end of the conversation. Your Worship, coming back to the current the current state of affairs, we did hear that there is a non-collateral loan initiative for affected traders. Can you tell us a little bit more about this and how this will support the recovery? How is it all going to work?
Well, what we're looking at is we're trying to find assistance from government and development partners to be able to give small loans to those who were affected. We've got a register of the people who have been operating there. I think it's a 1,500 or so odd number. We are looking at saying if we could get amounts of money loaned to them, depending on their records and what they need to do as part of our efforts to assist the people there. we can do that. Small amounts that can push and allow people to restart their businesses and so forth. We can't just look around. The modalities are still being worked out, and the amounts, the maximum amounts that can be given, are also still being worked out depending on what the resource envelope ultimately will be. So we are hoping that that will give assistance in a big way or small way to the traders that have been affected. Of course, there's a problem of subletting that the Residents Association was talking about. We'll try to find out how we can deal with the subtenants, because they might not be in our register, and you might compensate the wrong person. But I'm sure they've got leaders amongst their midst, and they know who was operating and who was not operating, and will engage their leaders to be able to get to assist them in that regard.
You mentioned about 1,500 people who are registered. Yet, from earlier reports, we heard that 4,659 people were affected. What will happen to all those people in the balance? Say 1,000 of them were subletting, so they are not going to get any assistance.
That's why I'm saying that they have associations, that they should have a register, and they know who was operating, but at least it would require extra vigilance to be able to deal with the extra. Sometimes informal sector is exactly that. Some might not have had a continuous presence. It was a kick and start and so forth. So it's a delicate operation, but we need to start somewhere. The 1,000 you help, it's 1,000 less people, and you increase the figures. What would be harmful is to do nothing at all, for fear that you might miss the mark. As you know, let's try and alleviate, so that we can stimulate the economy around the area, and also make sure that people do not suffer permanently from what has happened.
Coming to that criteria, the eligibility, who can then claim? So His Worship has outlined that no, there is a plan for these loans to be given out, but we are now faced with the issue of who is eligible. From a resident's perspective, Akili, I'm working with this 4,659 as reported by our sister station, as people who were sister publication rather, the H Metro, as people who are affected. So there's a clear disparity between the figures. How is everyone going to be catered?
Yeah, maybe probably from the local authority probably may know how they are going to cater for that. But from the figures we got, again, I think we also got around 5,000, around 5,000 people who have been seriously impacted. And like from what His Worship said, those who are in the council registers, they are around 1,500, and these are the ones which are formally engaged. But again, from a humanitarian perspective, I think at this moment we just need to help people. I know sometimes probably some people can want to manipulate the processes, but at this moment people who were operating there, people are known. And again, you realize that he said they are leaders, but also even the local authority officials know also that also there are some people like A, B, C, D. So again, it's very, very important that we need to have a holistic approach to ensure that everyone who was working in that environment is supported. Our major worry, Rumbi, before we even start to talk about the loans, is where are they going to operate from? Because at this moment there are ruins there. So we really need a serious probably conversation, round table conversation, to say how do we then put up infrastructure as soon as yesterday. And as I indicated, the issues of rains is one of the components. But again, the people also want to trade. Mbare Msika, His Worship, I think we discussed about Mbare a long time again. Mbare is the hub of the economy of Harare. If we take it that way, and see that it's beyond the livelihoods, but it's the heartbeat of the economy of Harare. And when such things happen, we really need to have that multi-sectoral approach where your local authority, your central government, and other important key stakeholders, they can also be able to contribute to ensure that we ensure that this thing is put on a jumpstart. And the jumpstart which is required at this moment as we plead to the development partners, it is the infrastructure. That's the jumpstart. And again, the people there then with worship and other colleagues also work on the loans. But again, when people have a space to operate, you actually see that probably they will start to bring stock probably worth 300, 500 as they build up. So we strongly believe that infrastructure at this moment matters most, and at the end of the day, it can also be able to house so that people can begin to start. You actually see people in Mbare. The good thing is you actually see that these people are the people who want to earn a living on their own, and if you go there, you could actually see the self-drive people, things which are sold in Mbare can tell you that people in Zimbabwe, they are not lazy people. They are people who do not believe in freebies, but they also want to do things, on their own. But again, at this moment, there is that need to say, how do we then embrace all of them and ensure that they are catered for as Hararians, as people also have been contributing towards the economy of Harare and towards the economy of Zimbabwe. So my plea is both to our lower tier of government, which is the local authority, central government, and ensure that we come up with a plan that will ensure that everyone is embraced and that infrastructure is put as soon as yesterday. If we can have an emergency situation where devolution funds are used in other aspects, I will not talk with them, but probably, let's say, water, for an example, or the Pomona issue, devolution funds are being used. We can use the devolution funds to fund the Mbare Msika. Harare City Council received only 10,000 devolution funds from January until now, and where is the rest? So these are the monies which I feel strongly that, even from a resident's perspective, to say the devolution funds could have been a good way of financing to ensure that that thing is constructed, and that will be the bilateral between the local authority and the government.
I'd like His Worship to come in on that. I mean, the big question, I suppose, is besides the financial support, what other support will be given to help the traders recover? There's the aspect of the infrastructure. Is it simply going to be them going back into those areas? Are there any future plans or initiatives?
No, we're going to have to build that thing. We can build that thing fairly quickly. The thing that is probably delaying us is the complex stakeholders that constitute the Mbare ecosystem. But as you saw what we did at the Rufaro Stadium, we managed to build the environments of the stadium fairly quick time, and we can work 24/7. And had it been a simpler place, we would have started already using our sister companies, either Rufaro Marketing or City Parking or any other vehicle that we can. Because basically what we need to put there is a warehouse structure, like the vegetable market that you see in Joburg, where we will have a space for the bulk market, and most of it is the mud that is there. That we need to work on, the flooring and the drainage. Once we do the pavers, the flooring and the drainage, that is almost 70% of the job done. And once we have done that, then we put the roof, and we do what you call climate control in terms of the warehouse, because they sell perishable goods. There was an element of uniforms and an element of other goods that had crept in. We can then look at how we accommodate that, but that we are trying to accommodate the bulk market and the retail, because that the place that bends is the Mbare retail market. So we take an opportunity to deal with the both sides. We deal with the bulk market, we deal with the retail market, and make sure that the infrastructure speaks to each other. We've got people who are ready, institutions that are ready, investors that are ready. What we need to do is to talk to the Mbare community, to talk to the stakeholders that there is no profit in chaos. We do understand that some people can make money in a chaotic environment, and that is granted. But in the end of the day, it ends in tears. So we want to avoid that tears element. And also we want our vegetables, our prime vegetable market, to be able to sell their vegetables in a sanitary place, in a manner that is predictable, in the manner where customers and both the retailers get value for the money. And our commitment we don't want to chase anybody. We will work with all the traders that have been there. What they need is to allow us to put in the work. We can improve that vegetable market as a city in quick time. We will commit to work 24/7 to make sure that when the rains seriously begin, there will be adequate drainage, there will be adequate cover, there will be adequate storage, and there will be preventive measures to take around the area. We are trying to modernize Mbare. If you noticed, some of the areas are already being modernized, and what we need to do is to create clean environments, thorough. If it means some of those roads will ban vehicles from moving in them, then we will do that, so that they become pedestrian alone, or forklifts and other things can move from one area to the other, just to enhance the trading in Mbare. So we need the community to understand that we are your council. We are there to provide solutions, and we have the wherewithal to be able to provide those solutions, and that they need to be comforted that we have no interest in removing any person from there. We will actually enhance the environment that they are operating in. What we cannot, both tiers of government, what we cannot is to look aside, pretend nothing has happened, and allow the chaos, the space barons, the breeders of chaos to come back and continue to exploit the innocent people who are trying to do business there. We've got the architectural designs. We can copy what has happened elsewhere. Prefabricated steel now can do wonders in the shortest period of time. The only difficult work that can be done there is the earthworks. As we scoop, as you know, part of the topsoil has taken layers upon layers, and what we need is to scoop it out, put a bit of gravel, do a bit of drainage, and then we are good to go. And people have to allow the various and I speak to all the stakeholders that are there. They need to understand that an environment has to be created inoita kuti vanhu vange vachiita business vari pano pakanaka. Hazvitori nguva kuti tigadzirise ipapo. Hapana munhu watoda kudzinga ba. Tiri kuda kubetsera community yeMbare, and hatisi kuda kuvatorera anything. Tiri kuda kuti vashande vari kushanda panzvimbo yakanaka. Hazvititorere nguva. Haizi nguva yekuti tikati toda kugadzira warehouse yepaMbare tinokwenya musoro tichitsvaga mari, tichiti hatina mari, tinokwenya musoro tichiti mari yashota. Zvinhu zviri kuda kugadzirwa paya hazvimbodhuriba. Hazvisi zvokuti tingati hurumende chaiyo kana hurumende yatinoti kanzuro ingabva yati tinobuda tsinga dzemuviri wese tichiti tiri kutsvaga mari yokugadzira mawarehouse evegetable market. That is not something that we have to give an excuse on.
Naizvozvo ndinofunga futi kuti it's going to happen in a quick time, isn't it? Our listeners are locked in and a few messages coming in. Anzi, maybe handina kuzvibata. Has the city already had an emergency meeting with stakeholders to set direction on the way forward? When will the loans be given, and when will things start to happen?
We've called for a meeting of a joint committee, SME in a disaster committee, for tomorrow. That joint committee will come up and endorse the plans that we have around Mbare. We met with the stakeholders, various ministry officials and other councillors visited the place. Saka patichasangana mangwana tiri mumakomiti encouncil tichange tichi teerera report yokuti tinge tichibatsira vagari vemu Mbare vanga vachishanda pamarket iyoyi. Tovagadzira ndo pachabuda gwaro nemagwaro anotaura kuti zvinotangira papi zvichinda nekupi, then tozosangana nema-stakeholders, ma-representatives naivo vakaafektwa nezviri kuitika ipapa, towirirana way forward nenguva yekukurumidza nenguva yechimbi-chimbi. Tawirirana ipapo, toinda paground, totanga kushanda.
and paripo ripotyo ndizvo ndakambozvidzidza izvo konapo Akili hanzi suggestion yenyu yokuti mari itorwe kuma-devolution funds. There's a listener who says devolution funds belong to the taxpayers. This is Peter, and any local authority advanced such is expected to account for them. Has the city accounted for all they've been funded so far? So big questions around accountability there. I don't know if you want to come in there.
I can answer that.
Oh yes, please do, Your Worship.
Kana devolution funds ichinzi inopuwa kazhinji kacho haiuyi iri musvo ndizvoka inouya ichiinda kwazvakananga. Kana tichida kuti igadzire pambu yemvura inouya yakanangana necontract nemunhu wacho anogadzira pambu yemvura iyoyo. Saka vanhu kana vachiti mari dzehurumende kazhinji kacho hadziuyi dziri mumasaga dzakananga kutown house dzopinda muofisi mameya ndogara paya ndakaisa makumbo mudenga ndichiverenga kuti mari yauya yabva kuhurumende yakamira sei. Kana ichinzi mari yauya tiri kureva maallocations inoinda kwayakananga. Munoisa mubhajeti moti toda kuita zvakati, toda kuvaka chakati, tine contract yakati, yoinda ikoko. Hurumende haingoregedzi mari seiri kudonhedza matohwe, inokupai mari yakanangana nezvamunenge mati zvichaitwa, zvamunenge mawirirana naivo maresidents. Kazhinji tinopuwa mari yekugadzira mapambu, yekugadzira chakati, yokuinda kumahospitari, kana kuti inobhadhara matrakta, inobhadhara mafire engine, inobhadhara chakati. Chatinagona kunetsana chete inyaya yemutengo yezvinhu zvatinenge tati tiri kuda kutenga. Asi ndinoona kuti vanhu mupfungwa dzavo vanofunga kuti vamafume vanovigirwa saga navamuturi, vonzi vona saga ngativerengerane, taverengerana voinda votanga kuidya semusonga wemushana. Hakuna zvakadini zvakadaro, mari inouya yakanangana zvainonotenga.
Alright, pakanakisa. Imwe tsamba yekubva kuna mazvimba kupa paGrindle says hevoi chera Honorable Mayor nava Akili Mbare Msika rebuilding or refurbishment is long overdue. I vividly remember in the 1990s some local guys teamed up with an international investor who approached the city council and GOZ to modernize the whole of Mbare, but the project never took off. It's sad, Kuti, we are now in dire straits. So I suppose that's more of a comment there. This one says, Ndibaba Bafianzi, my heart goes out to all who are affected in this tragic fire. Thank you for the informative conversation. Umagati Mbare onaiwo zvekuita panyaya yemarara, please. A very quick response from you, Harare. What on that? Marara.
Nyaya yemarara inyaya yataunganira tese nehurumende mumazuva anotevera. Patenge takawirirana nehurumende nokuti tichadzokorodza Chenesa 1 yatakamboita iya yatoita inonzi Chenesa 2. Iko zvino tauya nayo tine zvidobidobi zvatoda kuti tiitise. Tichange tichishandisa matrakta akatakapiwa, tichange tichishandisa muono mumwe chete watinenge tichiita nehurumende. Saka tichange tichigadzirisa nyaya ye-equipment, nyaya yemarara patinopedza hurukuro dzatiri kuita necentral government. Asi nyaya yemarara zveshuwa ndinoona kuti yashungurudza. Ndikatenderera mumasabhabhu, ndikatenderera patinogara, neniwo maziso anga haasi kufara nemamiriro akaita zviuru zvemarara zvinenge zviri paside pemaroad nepamwe panzvimbo yasinofanirwa kunge asiri. Asi tichange tichibatirana, chakanzi chara chimwe hachitswa nichiinda. Saka iko zvino tichange tichikomboredzana again nenyaya yemarara under Chenesa 2. Tomboona kuti tikaikutsirana futi hatikwanisi here kupedza marara togadzira a sustainable solution.
Oh, wonderful. I think we can take one quick call. Hello, good evening. Yes. So you have 1 minute. I have the mayor here and Mr. Akili, your comments.
Mayor, vanogona kukwanisa kuti vaka-affect kwavatsvakirwe mari. But pane chimwe chinhu chandiri kuona ndini chekuti panozoitwa ma-deep investigations. Moto uyu hausi moto we-accident, moto wakatoitwa ne-underhand. Ende unoti meya vaone nendau iyi yekuti pane mumwe muzvina business vanomuziya uyuyu akagwalisire farmaketi ari opposite, ari kunzi iye ari kushanda nevamwe vakuru vehurumende kuti iye akwanise kugona kuti atorere machembere
ndatenda zvangu mukomaraso nguva dzedu asi munokwanisa kutinyorera message tobva taisvitsa kuna mai, but I think your sentiments were heard there. Ndatenda zvangu aiwa
hakuna kana muchembere mumwe achatorerwa.
So you are pledging to do something about
yes, tichagadzira pambari. Hakuna muchembere mumwe chete achatorerwa story yake. Chembere dzese dziri ipapo dzinoramba dziri ipapo. Chatinoda ndezvekuti tichavagadzirira pakanaka pekuti vange vachishanda. Ndiripo ine hapana kana munhu wani achatorerwa table yake, asi tichavagadzirira tafura yakanaka, tafura yakachena, tafura yokuti vanokwanisa kuchengetedza zvinhu zvavo zvisingadi. Chatisingadi ndechekuvhundutsirana tichitaura zvakasiyana siyana. Ndava vanhu vanowanzo kuvhunduka zvinhu zvakanaka, vakaona zvinhu zvakanaka vanototi hazvikodzere isu. Chembere nevamwe vese vanga vachiopareta ipapo vanokodzera kushandira panhu pakanaka, ende tichavagadzirira panhu pakanaka. Takagadzira Rufaro Stadium, tikaunza chembere dzakawanda iko zvino dziri kutengesa murufaro pamatebholo akanaka, pagraundi rakanaka, ende tichariwedzera kunaka kusvika bhora renational team rava kutambwa ipapo. Saka kugadzira chakanaka hazvirevi kutorera munhu. Saka ngatisavhundusirana, ngatisaita anonzi makuhwa anoinda nekure kure. Isusu ngationei kuti basa raitwa. Kana pane muchembere wana abviswa ipapo, ngavauye naye kwandiri, ndimeke sure kuti inini ndinovadzosera pavanenge vachinzi vabviswa.
Excellent. Akili, your parting shot tichipendera chirongo ichi zvatiri kutarisira pamberi apa as quickly as you can.
Thank you so much. I think thanks you so much, His Worship the Mayor, I think, for acknowledging that might be the follies, also acknowledging the need which is being required there. In our view, from an association point of view, we are saying the infrastructure for that place it's needed, is urgent. You know, we would have probably envisaged where the mayor will say probably by December 1 would have completed, you know, the infrastructure development. To us, the infrastructure at this moment matters most, but also the sentiments which are being raised as I conclude by residents. You know, some of the residents are saying there are some people probably who are under the guise of public-private partnerships who then enter into a partnership with the local authority, and then at the end of the day they begin to own that space, and that space becomes expensive, and some people are then pushed out. So those are some of the sentiments, so that they can be able to clear it with the mayor. But otherwise, the infrastructure is needed as early as yesterday.
And His Worship Jacob Mafume, before we let you go, I'm well over time now. When a time factor, City Council.
We are prepared to start work immediately. What we need is kuti vanhu vanzwisise. Kana tichida kugadzira, hapana munhu watoda kutorera. Dai kuri kuda kwangu, taide tatova paground izvozvi, tatoisa maheavy machinery, taakutogreda. Asi nokunzwisisa madynamics anenge ari muMbare, makuhwa nezvinenge zvichiitika muMbare, tiri kufamba semarwaivhi tichifamba mbijana. Asi pari kudiwa kuti tifambe nespeed. My city council is ready immediately to deploy my resources tidile neipapa. Saka ma-stakeholders ekuMbare ngavauye vasangane nesu, tiwirirane, tovaitira ma-investments anodiwa ipapo, togadzirisa by end of November or mid-November tinenge tapedza.
I wonder, Tenda Zangu, and we do look forward to hearing the progress, I think, for the people of Mbare and beyond, economic growth, infrastructure, and an elevation of all the livelihoods. Thank you so much to my guests, His Worship the Mayor Jacob Mafume.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Always a pleasure.
Wonderful to have had you. And of course, Mr. Ruben Akili, Director for Combined Harare Residents Association. It was indeed a pleasure. Thank you so much.